Now, Sully, we both know there was a huge trade in the AFC this week. And guess what? In a twist, we're not starting with the AFC South, the team that got Stephon Diggs, or the AFC East, the division that got rid of Stephon Diggs. We're going to start with the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in their division, the AFC West. They have looked unstoppable in Kansas City for the past 2 years, 2 straight Super Bowls. Sully, what do the Chiefs still need to do to get better?
Yeah, I mean, we're nitpicking here, right? Because they are the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. They're still bringing back Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid still there, Travis Kelce. But I still think that this team needs a wide receiver. I think that that's the position that they've somewhat addressed it this offseason by acquiring Hollywood Brown, but that's only on a short-term deal. We just saw what happened this week with Rashee Rice. We don't know if the league's going to get involved with that. That possibly could lead to a suspension. And this all just goes to show you that Patrick Mahomes still needs some weapons. I mean, we're looking at them as this next wave of a Patriots dynasty, right? And what did the Patriots do over the course of their run? They were able to kind of adapt things around Tom Brady. It was Troy Brown to start. Then it was Randy Moss and Wes Welker. And then it was Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski. They need to find that next iteration with Travis Kelce getting older. I believe he's going to be age 35 season coming up here. And so to me, if they can find a receiver in the draft, I think that would really help them continue this impressive run that they've been going on.
Yep. Travis Kelce, 34, turns 35 in October. And look, he looked tired in parts of last season. He looked like his age was catching up to him. And there was some speculation that, hey, maybe he's going to retire. He's dating Taylor Swift. His heart doesn't look like it's into it. But then he got to the playoffs, tore everything up, and all that speculation died down. I definitely agree with that they have to look to wide receiver for help. And who knows what they're going to do? Who knows what's going to be available to him at the bottom of the first round? But the one thing is that, like, if Patrick Mahomes is listening right now, he's just laughing. He's like, haha, that's what everyone said in 2022 and 2023, and we just keep winning. We got rid of Tyreek Hill. We still win. I think the other thing that they might want to take a look at is offensive tackle. I think you look at their left tackle situation specifically, Donovan Smith, not under contract anymore. Who knows what's going to happen there? I think that they have Wanya Morris penciled in to start. And look, I don't know if that's the answer right there. And so left tackle is not a question mark you want to have, especially when Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a security. He has Travis Kelce. He doesn't have kind of a receiver that he really trusts right now. So the Chiefs, definitely a couple question marks going into the draft.
And we would be remiss if we didn't mention cornerback as well, obviously. You know, you trade away L'Jarius Sneed after the franchise tag. You got to find another player to inject into that secondary. That can come via the draft. And I've talked to you a bunch. I think Stephon Gilmore would make some sense there as well. They could find a veteran like that to inject into their secondary as well, but corner certainly a need for them.
The Chiefs don't look so invincible. Maybe somebody in the AFC West can knock them off. Maybe the Raiders, probably not, but they do have some needs. Obviously, a lot of needs. What do you think the biggest one is, Tyler? And I think we probably agree on this one.
It's quarterback, right? I mean, you know, you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, as we were just talking about. They're in a division with Justin Herbert. They need to find their counter to those two guys in the division. And, you know, they bring in Gardner Minshew. I think that's totally fine. Aiden O'Connell had some moments last year. I think both of those players can be stopgap guys, but they're not the ones for Antonio Pierce to say, you know what, here's this dude I'm going into the trenches with, you know, on a playoff run or anything along those lines. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in the NFL draft, where they're picking number 13 overall. It gets a little tricky, especially when we're talking about another team in this division that's coming up too. The Broncos, they might need a quarterback as well. They're picking number 12. But for me, if the things fall correctly for the Raiders, I wouldn't mind if they reached a little bit for Michael Penix Jr. or somebody like that, whether it's Bo Nix, any one of these prospects. I don't think that J.J. McCarthy's going to fall. I don't think Drake May or Jaden Daniels are getting out of the top 5. So without a trade-up, I would say Michael Penix would make a lot of sense for me here to give yourself a chance at getting an elite quarterback or higher quarterback play to compete in the division.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes to what the Raiders feel. If you know, Antonio Pierce is going to go into this season thinking we're a playoff contender, even if the outside doesn't necessarily think that. And if you do think you're a playoff contender, then maybe you're not staying put. If you stay at 13, you're probably not taking a quarterback. You want to get somebody who can contribute this year. But I do agree that if they trade up, they're just in an awkward spot for needing a quarterback. 13th overall, especially when you're sitting there, as you mentioned, not just behind the Broncos, but behind the Vikings, also two other teams who could be looking to trade up. So it is not going to be easy for them to trade up. So yeah, quarterback definitely. And I do think if they stay put at 13, I wouldn't be surprised if they take a cornerback. They have a couple holes there. Obviously, Jack Jones has one side locked down, Nate Hobbs in there, but they definitely need really somebody starting opposite Jack Jones. So taking a corner at 13, I don't think would be that crazy. And I feel like that would be their choice if they don't end up taking a quarterback. But I feel like those are their two biggest needs right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would go with cornerback there. It's funny enough, I have a 7-round mock draft for the Raiders coming out tomorrow.
Ooh, what a teaser.
Also, offensive tackle, too. They lost Jermaine Illuminor in free agency to the New York Giants. They could use a right tackle. At some point, they need to figure that out, and especially if they draft a left-handed quarterback, that's basically their blindside tackle. So that would be another one where this is a deep tackle class. That could be another position that maybe you look at if somebody falls there at number 13.
We just talked about the Raiders who need a quarterback. So let's go to another team that needs a quarterback, and that is the Denver Broncos. They decided to take a monstrous dead cap hit and get rid of Russell Wilson. And now they're in QB purgatory. So is that their biggest need? Or do you look at the roster and you think, man, maybe Jarrett Stidham can get this team to the playoffs?
You know, the last time I was a believer in Jarrett Stidham, I was still figuring out life post Tom Brady in New England here, thinking that before Cam Newton came along, I'm like, maybe Jarrett Stidham's the guy. Maybe they have a plan all along. Turns out the Patriots didn't. And I'm not falling for that twice. He flashed. He's been a good pro in the NFL, Jarrett Stidham has. And I think that could he be kind of that equivalent to Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell in Denver? Sure. I think that that's totally fair. I think he could be that stopgap guy. But the ceiling for him and the ceiling of a Jarrett Stidham-led Broncos team, I don't think is particularly high. That's why I think both of these teams are kind of fascinating to watch, because not only are they division rivals, but they're in search of the same thing in the NFL draft, and they're number 12 overall, number 13 overall. They are like neck and neck the entire way. So is someone going to leap over someone else? Maybe the Jets at number 10 if a quarterback falls to that spot. I think it's going to be really interesting. And so I'm curious to see what Sean Payton does. It's clearly quarterback, because you have to try to figure that out. He did not come back to coach Jarrett Stidham, Sean Payton. He came back to coach a contending team with an elite quarterback. And so if there's one that he sees, again, whether that's Michael Penix, Bo Nix, or if J.J. McCarthy falls for some reason that we don't foresee, that's the route I think they go down.
Yeah, I think that too. But like the Raiders, they're just in that awkward situation where you don't know for sure that you're going to be able to trade up, especially sitting behind the Vikings, who have 2 first-round picks, have a lot more ammo to make a big move. And then if you sit there at 12, you don't know who's going to fall in your lap. And so it's really dicey. I do agree with you that I think the Broncos are going to do whatever they can to take a quarterback, but maybe if they can't trade up and they're stuck picking at 12, I think they could go the same route as the Raiders and take a quarterback, corner, not a quarter, because you do have some top 15 corners. I don't think that this draft is great for corners as far as maybe first round goes, but I think you have Quenya Mitchell, you have Terrion Arnold, 2 guys to go in the top 15. So if for some reason the Broncos cannot find a trading partner, you say, all right, let's go find someone who can play opposite Patrick Surtain. Boom. So, yeah, but quarterback feels like the definite go-to here. You know who doesn't need a quarterback, Sully? The Los Angeles Chargers. But what do they need? You tell me what they need. I think we're on the same page here, too.
It's wide receiver. I mean, clearly, you see what happened to them this offseason due to cap constraints and free agency and all of that and trades. They don't have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler, who I would just count as pass catcher, throw that in there as well. The guys that Justin Herbert has made his money throwing the football to over the course of his career are just not there anymore. And Quentin Johnston wasn't, didn't really pop as a rookie. It was relatively disappointing. And so you have an opportunity here to go a couple of different routes. You have the number 5 overall pick. You could just sit back, let a team trade up with Arizona at number 4, probably take a quarterback in the first 4 picks. You're sitting there pretty saying, I can either have Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., whichever wide receiver I feel is best positioned to help this team go forward, or you could be that team that, let's say Arizona decides they want Marvin Harrison Jr., whatever, position of need. There's still a ton of wide receiver talent. Maybe you say, hey, listen, this is a pretty deep wide receiver class, and we have needs that stretch beyond that as well. In fact, we could probably double dip at wide receiver considering that we lost so much talent at that position. What if Minnesota wants, 11 and 23, and you just address wide receiver at both those spots? So they have some flexibility here, but clearly they need to find the new binky for Justin Herbert at wide receiver, especially losing a guy like Keenan Allen, who was a 100-catch guy. That's a ton of volume that they need to kind of recoup.
It still blows my mind that Keenan Allen led the team in receiving yards last season, and the Chargers had the gall to ask him to take a pay cut. Imagine leading your team, being the best player at your position on your roster, and they're still like, yeah, you were good, but we need you to take less money, Keenan. That's a slap in the face, right?
It's bananas. And credit to him for saying, no, I'm not doing that.
Absolutely.
As much as he would have gotten a lot of praise when it comes out, Keenan Allen's restructured his deal to make things work. All of those reports, he'd get a ton of praise on social media. But at the end of the day, this is a business. These guys need to make money. He could be out, in 2 snaps, or, as the New York Jets have seen, your star quarterback can be gone in 4 snaps. You don't know what's going to happen in the NFL. So you have to keep your money where you can get when you can. Certainly, if you're financially flexible enough to make that sacrifice, good for you. But I'm not going to besmirch any player to say, no, I'm keeping my money. Why would I do that?
Yeah, I think one thing interesting with the Chargers is that we have Jim Harbaugh out here who has basically turned into P.T. Barnum, just the ultimate salesman. First, you have him saying, hey, look, the 5th pick is really the number 1 overall pick for teams that don't need a quarterback. And he's mostly right, because it feels like quarterbacks going to go with the top 4 picks. And then obviously we've talked a little about how he's just totally building up J.J. McCarthy to try and make him a top 5 pick, which makes the Chargers pick more valuable. So I do think it's interesting. It feels like a spot where the Chargers maybe trade out. Maybe if you like Marvin Harrison more and he gets taken at 4, then you're thinking, all right, we'll trade back. So if you're the top guy at receiver on your board gets taken, you have that option to trade back. And I feel like the right side of their offensive line could use a little bit of help. Maybe you don't want to do that with the 5th overall pick, but you trade back. This is a pretty strong draft for offensive linemen. So that could make some sense if you trade back. But yeah, receiver at 5 feels like the best for them.